As a child, I only really saw women be housewives or perhaps do administration jobs or work part-time cleaning and so on. All the women in my life at the time were financially dependent on the men that they spent their life with, and I knew that I never wanted to be in that situation, that I wanted to be financially and emotionally independent and have a career. So I channeled my education and my work to achieving that. In my educational years, I encountered certain challenges. I went to a failing high school that was put into special measures while I was there, and at the time I was determined to go off to university and train to be a doctor. And at the time, St George's University in London were offering an outreach programme to try and get children from failing or underachieving schools into medicine. So they guaranteed to interview you if you had the right predicted grades for your A-levels. So I was interviewed there. I had a conditional offer on the basis that I got 3 A's, and in my A-levels I got A star AB, and so because of my B they wouldn't accept me. So that was the end of that route at the time. I looked at then doing biomedical science as a Bachelor of Science degree with the intention of going on to do graduate entry medicine, but this seemed less appealing to me, and at the time the paramedic university route was becoming more available, and I thought if I applied to the University of Surrey, where they did the full BSc in paramedic practice, that would put me on the same pedestal if I still chose to go on to do medicine in the long run. So applied there and did my Bachelor of Science degree, and have never progressed on to medicine. I've been sort of really fortunate, I suppose, to end up in the role that I have done, where I have significant clinical responsibility and autonomy, and I'm very happy with how my career ended up despite the challenges that were faced. Prior to going to university, I worked in the hospitals in Bristol as a healthcare assistant, and from there I worked on the patient transport service, so the non-emergency ambulances. I then trained as a student paramedic. Originally I planned to do this in-house, but I actually went to the University of Surrey, where your BSc was funded at the time by CCAM, the South East Coast Ambulance Service. And after that, I worked in Surrey for a while before relocating to Devon, working for frontline ambulances for a period of time down here, and then joining Devon Air Ambulance, which is where I've been for the last 5 years. There are a lot of expectations on clinicians prior to joining HEMS, including undertaking sort of unpaid or voluntary work, having higher education, and sort of showing commitment to the charity that you're applying to through attending governance days, observational shifts and so on. And this can be particularly difficult for women, either with dependents or women, as we know that they do the largest proportion of unpaid work, up to 3 times as much as men. So trying to find time and childcare and so on to undertake these duties can be more of a challenge. And this continues into HEMS, where in a perfect world, HEMS charities will have paid study hours and paid charity time, rather than expecting clinicians to work their full-time operational hours and then attend county shows on the weekends in what should be their spare time. So many things can be changed to increase the accessibility of working within HEMS for women. Currently in the UK, just 1 in 4 critical care paramedics is a woman, and 1 in 5 critical care doctors identifies as a woman, despite the fact that there is nearly a 50-50 split in registered frontline paramedics and registered doctors. So I used my master's dissertation research to explore what was causing this pyramidal effect, and from this I produced a recommendations document, which is sort of starting to be disseminated nationally, to try and get more women into HEMS and help with their representation. So to give you some of the recommendations now, things like the communications that charities disseminate are quite often staged or posed photography, and very often it's of all male teams. Or it's something called the Smurfette principle, where it's one woman showcased entirely amongst an ensemble of men. In a perfect world, comms teams would amend this and start showing increased diversity in the imagery that's being put out, on the basis that you can't be what you can't see. And when I'm referring to diversity, I mean both in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of body habitus. We need to stop sort of portraying the all action hero bias, and be more reflective of the communities that we're serving. Other things that can be done include anonymising CVs prior to application, so there's less chance of unconscious bias impacting recruitment. Things like mentorship schemes that can assist particularly women to sell themselves, to have more confidence, to talk less in the passive voice. So, for example, women may say on their CV, I was lucky enough to be afforded the opportunity to experience X, Y, and Z, rather than simply saying, I experienced X, Y, and Z. Men tend to do this more naturally. We know from research that if a man looks at a job description where they can do 3 out of 10 things on the job description, they think, well, I can do those things, I'll apply. Whereas women look at the 3 out of 10 and think, well, I can only do those 3 out of 10 things, so I won't apply. So there's issues around confidence. To try and boost confidence, HEMS employers can increase their transparency prior to recruitment. So if they're doing fitness tests, they should be relevant to the job. So for example, carrying a weighted rucksack 500 metres and then performing an advanced life support scenario, as opposed to doing bleep tests, press-ups and sit-ups, which some services choose to put their candidates through. We need to ensure that a diverse panel are present on assessment days. So we're avoiding manels, which are all male panels, again because we're avoiding unconscious bias impacting recruitment. In terms of the job itself, there should be absolutely no resistance to less than full-time working contracts. This may mean that employers need to be slightly more innovative when it comes to maintaining their clinicians' skill set, their scope of practice, whether that's through hospital placements to increase exposure, or potentially reducing their sort of charity time and ensuring they have more of a clinically focused time, more operational shifts. As well as this, there's some recommendations that I've put out surrounding future air-based designs. So we know that women do the vast majority of unpaid work. So what I mean by this is cooking, cleaning, shopping, care of dependents, care of elderly relatives and so on. With unpaid work, if a proportion of this could be done in the workplace, for example by new air bases having laundrette facilities, that will partly enable women to have a better work-life balance. If new air-based designs have family-friendly accommodation, so women with children or dependents can spend more time with their families in between shifts, as we know that people commute significant distances to do a job in HEMS, then that could help. Also things like creche or nursery facilities that operate during unsocial hours. So I can speak firsthand and say that in Devon, when I was looking to put my daughter into a nursery, only 3 nurseries in the whole of Devon offered unsocial hours care. And for my situation, the nurseries that offer sort of 8 till 5 care just doesn't fit in with shift times, or is largely unhelpful for shift times. In my role, there are a couple of things that I find the most rewarding. Number one being the ability to give an additional tier of care to the patients that we see, who are the most sick or injured. And number two being the ability to support crews in situations that they may be less comfortable or less familiar with.